What is going on, everybody? I'm Boatman.
And I am Jimmy the Stache.
And today we've got a unique first review of a new attraction at Disney Springs. We're at Disney World right now.
Yep, we are at Disney
filming
World.
for something else.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, something you'll see very soon. But today we're going to do a new experience. Jimmy, tell them about the new experience.
Yeah, so we're going to actually go, like I said, we're in the Magic Kingdom right now. We're actually going to go over to Disney Springs, which is the shopping district, and we're going to do a brand new thing that just popped up. It's from a company called The Void. I cannot remember the exact name of the attraction, but it's a Star Wars VR thing. The thing about it is, though, the real kicker is that not only is it VR, you put on the headset and stuff, but if you see it in virtual reality, you can touch it in the real world.
And you can smell it, and
Yes.
you can feel it.
Yes, so it's like the highest peak of virtual reality.
It's virtual reality to its fullest potential.
Yeah, so we're super excited. We've already signed up to do it, and hopefully we will give you our reviews after we do it. A little bit later, it's going to be darker.
And we're going to be tired.
And we're going to be really tired. So we'll probably be doing a little bit more filming throughout the park and stuff before we leave, but that's kind of what we're doing at the very end of the day. We're going to go check it out, and hopefully we'll have a blast. I'm really hopeful.
I've got my fingers crossed, and I'm pretty sure we'll have a good time.
Yep. So if we see anything interesting around the park, we'll be sure to show you. But other than that, we'll be back later.
Welcome back, guys. I'm the Water Boatman.
And I am Jimmy the Stache.
And today we're going to be talking about a interesting experience, as you saw in the intro there. We're talking about a experience called The Void.
Yes, the Void, which sounds very mysterious and very, very ominous.
So, hey Jimmy, why don't you tell us what The Void is before we get too deep into it?
Yes. All right, so picture this. Not that long ago, I was at Disney Springs with some friends of mine, including the Water Boatman himself, and we stumbled across this thing called The Void. Now, sounded very mysterious, as I mentioned before, and I was very curious as to what it was, and I ended up looking into it and found out that The Void is actually, I believe they call it a hyper-reality VR experience, or something of the like, and basically what The Void is essentially taking VR and kicking it up one more notch to the point to where the one problem with VR right now, with like Oculus and Vive, is that they're really, really cool and really immersive, but you see a table, like I've seen so many times where people will see a table in virtual reality and then try to lean on it and just fall flat on their face. There's no table there. You see the table, but it's not there. What this tries to do is it essentially tries to make it to where if you see it, it physically exists in the real world. And if something happens to you, it physically feels like it's happening in the real world, just to give you that extra sense of immersion. So you basically it's just a series of rooms mapped to the VR, like the real life rooms mapped to VR. So you walk around and it feels like you're in a completely different place doing a completely different set of things, but you can interact and touch and feel, and honestly, it's just like a next level virtual reality experience.
Basically, the way that it works is you are divided into teams of 4, and from those teams, you are given the VR gear, which is actually something that I was pretty impressed by. It is a headset complete with microphones and headphones built in, and a backpack, which is where it gets most of its power from, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the backpack is basically just a laptop. Essentially, I'm sure that's what's actually running the programs and the graphics and stuff.
Right. It's some kind of external processor of some sort. But what you get is a really interesting setup. You have no controllers, but you can interact with things differently because it IR tracks your hands. So you can literally see your hands in real time, with a little bit of fuzziness here and there where the tracking's not perfect, but it's pretty close. The setup is pretty neat because you can see your entire team, you can see everybody, and you can communicate with them back and forth very easily. The rooms that Jimmy was talking about are typically they're I'd say about probably an 8x8 room that is that has a door in and a door out. The door in and out, both doors in and out, open and close, so that way when something closes behind you, you can't go backwards. But what's really neat is that there's a lot of force feedback and a lot of actual sensory feedback. So, not to give much away, but there is part of the experience where there is some heat associated with some lava, and you can actually feel that. And that's really, it takes IR and AR, or not IR, VR and AR to the complete next level. This is what VR was truly meant to be, in my mind. So, Jimmy, who is this ideal for?
I mean, in my opinion, it's ideal for someone who wants to just try something new. Like, definitely people who are really into Star Wars. I really think that it's honestly such a cool thing to do if you're really into Star Wars, and if you're into VR in general. It's definitely interesting to try out, because like if you've ever tried Oculus or Vive, you'll know what I'm talking about, or even Gear VR, or even Cardboard.
Yeah, we forgot to mention something. The attraction based in Disney Springs is actually a Star Wars themed attraction.
Right. Yeah, we didn't even mention that. But yeah, it's Star Wars. Is the entire point of the virtual reality experience, and they've done the Void is actually a company / experience, and they've done other things, like they've done a Ghostbusters VR experience at the Madame Tussauds in New York, and I'd actually read about that before, and then not realizing that it was the same people that did this, and yeah, honestly it's kind of worth it to check out. Honestly, even if you only do it once, it's honestly, I would recommend it to just about anyone that's just interested in trying something high tech and new. Just because it is such a it's such a next level thing, and it's not 100% there yet. Like, there are still some minor issues that we'll get to a little bit later, but just to see, like, this is the beginning of something truly magical, like an experience that is just going to be something that like we've only imagined up to this point.
Exactly, and that brings us to the next point. We've got a semi-script here. The associated cost. There is literally the wonderful thing about Disney Springs is it's one of the few things that you can park at on Disney property that's free to actually go into. Mm-hmm. It's effectively a glorified shopping mall if you don't know what Disney Springs is, but if you are local to the Southeast, it may be an excellent option for your next vacation. Or at least a nice day trip if you're a couple hours away.
Right.
Now the cost for the Void is actually only about $30. So you're getting a 30-minute experience, roughly 30 minutes, for $30. So, and the nice thing is that if you get a group of 4 going, it's a really great experience. Even for I considered it a good experience that we could use for team building. So, like, if you've got a company that you want to do some team building exercises with, this would be a really, really great experience and opportunity.
Right. Yeah. And it depends on how you look at it. It can be a little pricey, and then it in my opinion, it wasn't that pricey, but I'm also somebody who's gone to Disney enough to see things and go, well, to temper my expectations a bit and go, well, it's Disney pricing. But honestly, like $1 a minute, I don't think it's all that bad. Honestly, I think the experience is well worth trying. As I said before, at least once.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that yes, it's $30, and yes, $30 can seem like an expensive attraction, but just for the sheer interest of it, and the sheer technology that went into it, this is what we'll see in the next probably 10 years, exploding in popularity and probably becoming the next plausible evolution for theme park attractions.
Right.
I've seen one. There's at least one roller coaster in Orlando that has been retrofitted with VR, which I think is weird because it's not a roller coaster I would think should be retrofitted with VR because it's very shaky. It's the Kraken at SeaWorld. That was retrofitted with VR goggles. And I think that this is just kind of the next logical progression of attractions that are virtual reality and augmented reality in nature.
Right.
So, Jamie, let's move on to the plot. Give me a brief summation of just kind of no spoilers, but just kind of what this whole thing's about.
All right. So yeah, I don't want to spoil it too much. It's a very short experience, so I don't really want to give the entire thing away. But I'll try to give you just a little bit of it without giving the entire. I mean, it's very straightforward. It's not like there's something you find out that is part of the Star Wars lore that everybody's like, holy crap! It's not a revelation or anything. But nevertheless, I don't want to spoil the fun. Mm-hmm. But so the basic plot is, the basic starter is that it takes place during the Rogue One timeline, so right before Episode 4, and all that jazz. And it involves the Rogue One characters. So Cassian, I believe, if I remember correctly, is his name is, basically sends you on a mission to retrieve a thing from a base on Mustafar. Hence the lava everywhere, as we said before. And so you have to infiltrate that base dressed up in disguise as stormtroopers to try and retrieve the thing that Cassian wants you to retrieve. And so that's basically the entire plot. The thing that I thought was really cool, one of the more iconic moments, which is just right at the beginning, so it's not really super spoilery. In fact, it's in the trailer. If you look at the trailer, there's a trailer online if you're very curious as to what it looks like, where you're on a ship and you come into Mustafar from the ship, and K2SO is there as well. Good old Alan Tudyk robot. And I love K2SO. And basically you exit the ship onto this floating platform. And so you literally feel like you're on a ship. The ship's door opens. You walk out onto this platform, and then the platform hovers you into the base. And all the while you're on this platform, which is just in some room, but because, of virtual reality, it feels like you're moving along on this platform. You feel the heat from the lava all around you, because there's lava right underneath you. And you can feel the heat of it until you step into the base. And it's just that little extra immersion that's just super cool. But yeah, you start out without any kind of weapons. You're just sneaking onto the ship, and then a little ways through, you find some blasters, and that is an awesome feeling, finding the blasters and then picking them up, and they track 1-to-1. Like, your hands don't always track perfectly, but the blasters always track perfectly. And it's really cool. You just find them laying on a wall, or like hanging on a wall, and you could pick them up and start shooting at things. And in fact, Boatman,
I shot you at least once.
He screwed up our entire operation because we grabbed the guns, and then he ended up shooting one off and alerting all of the people of our existence, and then we had to run for it.
Well, okay, all right, let me put it this way. I picked it up, I said, I wonder what happens if I pull the trigger, and one of the attendants says, there's an attendant with you at all times to make sure that you're not going to hurt yourself.
Yeah.
One of the attendants says, go ahead, everybody does. So I pull the trigger. And of course it goes off, and they're like, oh, so much for subtlety, and then you have to run out, and you have to fight your way out. And
that makes
really
me beg
cool.
the question, is like what it would have been like if you hadn't have done that. Like, if it still would have gone off or not, and you would have had to fight your way out, or if we would have just had to like sneak through. Probably, I mean, at some point we would have had to fight fought our way out. But it's just interesting. Was curious to know if you hadn't have shot it off, what would have happened.
Yeah, I think that it's probably written into the code to have one go off.
Right.
Just so that way there's that instantaneous, so much for subtlety, now everybody's got to fight.
Yeah, I don't know, but at any rate, that's pretty much the summation of the plot that you need to know. You can, like I said, it's a very short trailer. It doesn't give too much away, but like the thing that it shows in the trailer is kind of what you're doing. Yeah.
So how did you enjoy it, Jimmy?
So, in my opinion, it had like
save criticism for the next section.
That's true. In my opinion, I thought it was a really, really cool experience. It was definitely like it met my expectations. Granted, I had very tempered expectations. I didn't expect it to be like the most amazing thing in the world. I didn't expect it to be, like The Matrix or anything. But like I kind of figured about like, it's not like super hyper realistic graphics. It's about what you would expect from like a decent video game, which to me doesn't really bother me. I still stay, like, from what I've done of VR, I still stay pretty immersed in something like that. So it was still a lot of fun, and the environment, the like actual real things that happen to you that like mix with the virtual reality stuff, this makes it feel all the more real, like the heat and other things just takes it to a whole nother level, in my opinion. And just really, I loved that whenever you would feel the heat, or you would feel like you get hit and you'd feel like the vibration on your vest, like it felt so much more real than like when I put on like my Gear VR and just like look at fish or something. Like it felt so much more real, and it was just cool because like, you were all stormtroopers and you could see each other moving around and making hand movements, and at different heights. Everybody's height was like accurate. It was, yeah. So honestly, I would give it 2 thumbs up. I thought it was definitely not perfect, which we'll get into, but like a very, very cool experience that unlike anything I've ever done before.
I agree. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had lower expectations than you did. I'm very apprehensive when it comes to virtual reality, just because it's one of those things that has been screwed up so bad in the past. But they really knocked it out of the park with this one. Even if you only do it once, it is a terrific experience for anybody who's really into immersive virtual reality experiences. One of the more interesting parts of the experience is there's a scene where you've got these, not to give too much away, but there's a scene where you've got these steel doors in the way, or these steel like panels that go up and down, and there's a point where you can actually lower the panel. You drop the panel, and there's stormtroopers on the other side, and depending on proximity, how close you are to that wall, you can hear them knocking on the door. Yeah. So you can hear just dung 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 knocking on the door, and it was it's an immersive. Yeah. It's an immersive thing, and then you open it, and there's like a wall of stormtroopers, and you're like, "Crap!"
Yeah, and if I might interject for just a second and then get right back to your point, I think one of the biggest things that makes it so cool is that with regular virtual reality, you're tethered to a small space. With this, you're not. I mean, you're still technically tethered to a small space, but you can walk around. You're continuously walking to the next point. You're not walled off. Like, I mean, you are, like I said, you are walled off, but you're walking from room to room instead of just being stuck in the one room the entire experience, which I think just brings it to that next level. You can actually physically walk around this virtual world.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing with stuff like Gear VR and Oculus and Vive is that when you're not moving, if you're not moving, it's fine. There's no disorienting feeling. But when you're moving in those games, if you're moving forward or backward or kind of walking around in the game, but you're not actually moving, that can be really disorienting to some people.
Right.
This, you're actually moving, so it doesn't feel weird.
Not at all.
All right, so that being said, there are a couple of things that can be improved. Biggest thing in my mind is the hand tracking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. As Boatman was saying a little earlier, it uses IR or otherwise known as infrared to track your hands. So the way it works, and I've tried this before on an Oculus that I tried at a place, but there's like a little infrared sensor that's on the front of the visor that you put on your head, and it uses that to sense where your fingers are, and so like you can actually move individual fingers and stuff, which is really cool, and it tracks your hands. But the problem with that is proximity, and if you're close to somebody else, like if you try to high five someone or something like that, all of a sudden it sees multiple sets of hands, it gets confused, and it doesn't know what the heck to do. It doesn't know what to do with its hands.
Right. I think an easy fix for that, to be honest, is color coded gloves.
Mm-hmm.
Or like the blasters had a light system built into them, so that way it knew which blaster was which. So like, okay, I registered this blaster as the blaster that I'm using, so gloves could be easily or like a wristbands could be easily done, so that way you could track this is the set of hands that's wearing this suit. Right. Other than that, I would say some of the room mapping could have been done a little better. I noticed that I felt like if I got too close to a wall, it kind of broke immersion, because like the wall would go back further visually than I actually could go back.
Yeah, calibration was a little off, at least when we did it, because at one point I was touching something, and kind of like you said, I was touching it and feeling the physical. The physical was there, but it was just slightly off from the visual. So my hand wasn't exactly where it was. It was just slightly off, which does break the immersion slightly. So I think it might have just been something they could have fixed easily with a recalibration. But at the time, that was a little immersive breaking whenever you were touching something. Yeah, and it was just ever so slightly off. And you're like, that doesn't feel quite right.
Well, and there's the last scene, not to spoil it, the last thing you see is C2B5, which is the black R2 unit.
Yeah, that was what I was referencing.
That calibration was a little off, so like you would touch it, but you would look like your hand went through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
or you would feel like your hand's not quite there. So it with maybe a little better lighting, because it was fairly dark in there actually. If you looked outside your goggles, but really you can't really focus outside your goggles. You can't see anything beneath because your entire peripheral is filled with. You're getting a lot of information all at once, which is really adds to the depth and adds to the immersion factor. What's next? Let's see. I hate to break that fourth wall, but why it works for me, pretty simple. I like Star Wars. I haven't watched Rogue One. I'm a terrible Star Wars fan because I hate going to the movies, and I hate getting into things that are like, I'm a hardcore fan. When I'm a fan of something, I get hardcore into it. Jimmy can attest to my hardcore fandom towards like Nightmare Before Christmas or Back to the Future, because I'm hardcore into those.
Right.
The one thing I found that I'm not hardcore into is Rick and Morty, thank God. But, I'm a casual fan. But Star Wars I'm kind of super casual on, but it wasn't something that I needed to see the movie to understand the plot of the actual attraction.
Right,
and that's something to be said, that you don't need to have previous knowledge. Obviously Cassian is not a character that you would recognize immediately from the first trilogy, because he's not in the first trilogy. He's before that.
He's strictly a Rogue One character. Yeah,
right. So you would kind of be like, same thing goes for some of the other droids, but you do see a familiar face. I'm not going to spoil it. You do see a familiar face in the in one of the last big scenes, and it's really cool.
Yes,
it's really cool. So Should you try it? Absolutely, if only once.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Jimmy, you got any closing statements, closing arguments for this review?
I think we've pretty much explained all we need to explain. I think it's also over in California. I think I saw something about Los Angeles, Las Vegas. I don't know. It was a lost something. Actually, give me 1 second. Just bear with my clickety clack of the keys real quick with my mechanical keyboard.
I'll just start talking, and then you can just block your stuff out.
Let's see. The Void operates locations: Anaheim, Dubai, Linden, UT. I don't know where that is. London, UK, New York, Orlando, Florida, and Toronto.
So if you're local to any of those areas and you want to check out The Void, please do. It is a really great experience. We'll link down to the trailer in the description box below. It is definitely worth taking a look and, maybe bugging your spouse, bugging your friends, bugging your moms and dads and seeing if they can go with you. Because I feel like if you took a group of 4 friends, it would definitely be a different experience than, say, what we did, which was literally us and 2 strangers.
Right, which was fun. They ended up being really cool, and we didn't really have a problem with them. Like, it was definitely a fun experience. But yeah, just having a bunch of friends do it, like they're all friends. I imagine you would have a lot of fun just goofing off and.
Yeah, and that's just it. Is that there's a lot of room to kind of goof around, and it's not really forcing you to kind of push through. You can push through a whole lot faster than 30 minutes for sure. There are certain scripted events that you can't push past as quickly, but there are scenes where you can kind of dilly-dally and kind of really take in the VR and really enjoy the environment that's presented in front of you.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that's all that we've got for this review. If you liked this video, please hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, hit subscribe. And Jimmy, play us out.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you in the next one.
Bye.